Hi guys, how are we doing? Coming at you with a slightly different episode today. So this is going to be a Q&A, live Q&A, stood in my kitchen as opposed to usually at my desk. I'm going to hit you with a bunch of questions that I asked when I put out Q&A the other day. So before I get into it, if anyone likes this style of content, Q&As, let me know. Would love to hear from you. And if you aren't already, please make sure that you subscribe to YouTube if you're watching it there, or subscribe to the podcast if you're listening to this in your ears. Means the world and allows me to carry on doing this knowing I've got the support of you guys. I'm almost at a milestone of 10,000 listens, which is minor compared to podcasts out there. They've got like 10,000 subs, but it's a good sign that people are listening, and I really appreciate the support. So thank you very much. So without further ado, I'm going to get into it. So first question, I probably should have written down who these were from rather than just put it in my notes on my phone. So first question, how to know when you should stop scaling your business? Is a great question. I think this is something which we all fall into the trap of like, I'm going to keep scaling, keep growing this thing without really comprehending, like, is it what I want? Now, if anyone knows, I'm a big fan of Chris Williamson's podcast, and he does this phrase, which I love, was what do I want to want? Like, what do I want out of my life? And make intentional decisions that work towards that. And I'm a big fan of doing that within your business as well. So what actually do I want from this thing? Do I want an absolute monster of a business that's going to make 50, 60, 100K a month? Is that what you want? Is that going to give you the life that you want? And am I willing to accept the downsides of that? How many hours you got to work, potential staff, stress, overheads, etc.? Or do you want a more lifestyle-based job? Do you want something which is going to be 6, 8, 10K per month, and it's going to give you very much a lifestyle? You're never going to be super rich, but you're going to work obviously a reduced number of hours compared to someone who's scaling to the heavens, but you're probably going to be able to do it in a way where you can enjoy the day-to-day a bit more. And honestly, there's no right or wrong answer here. I often joke, and I spoke to some other kind of coaches, mentors who feel the same way. I was probably at my quote-unquote happiest in terms of business when I was doing like 8, 9K a month. That was like the number whereby you're doing a decent amount of check-ins every day, but it's not all consuming. You're not just engaged in constant business acts. It's not so busy that you can't train when you want. You've got a really nice balance of life. Now, was that ultimately what I wanted? No, absolutely not. But for some of my clients, it is. It is that. And I've recently stopped working with a client and his approach was, I want to enjoy my training. I want to get back doing things I love. And he built his business, and we'd helped him build his business to the point whereby he was like, I'm cool with that. Like, I'm happy where I'm at. I don't want to grow any further. And that's really awesome. That's admirable. Like, I've done my job. He's done his job. Amazing. Sometimes people want to push it on. Ultimately, I can't tell you how to scale, when to stop. And you're also going to have different phases of life. So you're going to go through phases where you're going to want to grow. And you're going to have phases where you want to just sort of coast and maintain. And that can happen seasonally. You might decide that you're going to push things heavily in the winter months where you're not doing as much, and then kind of coast through the summer, enjoying yourself. That's very, very fine. You could have years where you push, years where you hold, also fine. Ultimately, it has to work for you. And I'll oscillate myself between where I'm going to go with the business. Like, what am I deciding to do? And sometimes that will be, I want to take over the world. I want to build this absolute monster, this empire. And other times I'm like, you know what? I'm happy just to kind of sit here for a bit, and I'll just oscillate. And there is no right or wrong answer, as long as they don't go in conflict to each other. Like, you don't want to build a business where you're doing like 50K a month, decide that you're going to scale things down to 10K a month, live a lifestyle, then all of a sudden change your mind because you're going to have to build it back, right? So you kind of want a consistent goal, not just changing your mind every 5 minutes. But I would encourage you to sit down, whether yourself, your partner, journal, however you do it, just to really get a good idea of what do you actually want out of your life, and then reverse engineer what that would look like with work. I can't necessarily answer that for anyone, but hopefully that gives you some tools and some thought processes to make a decision that's going to align with your long-term goals. And just speaking like candidly on that one at the end, I'm probably at the point now where I'm like, I'm going to hold here for a little bit, right? I'm at all-time high revenue. I'm very, very happy in terms of that. I hit numbers I always said I wished I got to. And part of me is like, push on. But part of me is like, why? What do I need that for? And maybe I hold here for a month or two. Maybe I do push on. Maybe I decide this is it for me. Maybe I'm happy. I don't know, but I don't need to make a decision this moment. I need to carry on the actions that are going to hold me here. I need to make sure that I enjoy what I'm doing and move on from there. And that's actually a really good point I didn't mention sooner, is enjoyment. You have to actually enjoy this thing. You either enjoy the build, enjoy the lifestyle, enjoy something, but make sure that you actually enjoy what you're doing. Because if you don't enjoy it, it's pointless doing it. You don't want to hate your life. Like a lot of us got into working for ourselves because we've got that entrepreneurial mindset. We want to build something, sure, but make sure you actually enjoy what you're doing. You don't need to enjoy every single moment, but you need to make sure on the whole you enjoy it. I've had periods where I haven't enjoyed the build because I've stressed myself too much and something needs to change. So maybe you find yourself doing that, realize that you can and should make a change at that point to enjoy it a lot more. But ultimately decide what you want, reverse engineer and make it fit that. Okay, so this is a question that I get a lot. Best advice for someone struggling to get leads into my business. Feel like I'm posting all the time, but no one is inquiring. This is so common for coaches. So common is I'm just not getting leads in my business. Now, I've obviously done a ton of videos on this. I've done so much information on my academy to do this. This is what I work with one-to-one mentees on. So I'm going to kind of go through some very, very base level things that you need to be thinking about and incorporating. And if you're not doing it, start there. So number one, understand your avatar, right? You have to understand who you're talking to. If you don't, you're always going to fall short. And it doesn't have to be, I coach busy professionals or some nonsense like that. But understand the psychographic, the demographic. So the psychology of the person that you want to coach, the demographic. So I coach coaches, but you could coach males, females, between this age range, this country, whatever that looks like. Have an understanding who that person is, right? Once you know that, you can look at their pain points, their problems, their dream outcomes, and ultimately from that, you can determine an offer. And an offer, quite simply, is I get you from pain point to solution minus perceived issue. So I get you from, let's talk about business, I get you from feeling lost, confused in your own business, scared it's going to fail, to feeling confident, having the awareness that it's going to continue to grow. You're attracting your dream clients and you're doing it without sending thousands of DMs to strangers. I'm giving you from pain point to solution minus the thing that you think you need to do to get there, perceived issue. If you can do that, then you have an idea of what you do, who you help, and then you need to add on your personal brand on top, who you are. And then it's the case of putting out things within your sales funnel to match that. So I've got videos on my YouTube podcast on what a sales funnel is. Make sure you pay attention to that and ultimately put things throughout the sales funnel. Make sure you're doing top of funnel, middle funnel, bottom of funnel. And the likelihood is we've probably got gaps all the way through. People aren't finding you, getting to your page, otherwise you'd have thousands of followers. Once they're there, there's a disconnect between them understanding who you are as a person, so your personal brand needs to pick up. They need to have understanding of you as an authority figure, as a coach, and they need to have relatability to you as well. Think of the middle funnel as boiling water, right? So you're taking for someone from 1 degree to 99 degrees. Throughout the entire time, it looks the same. You can't see the change, right? You can't see the change of water, but it's getting hotter, right? The water's getting hotter. It only changes state at 0 and 100. So we need to understand that this is work that you don't see the outcome from. But then with the bottom of funnel content, the social proof, the pain point, the CTAs, that's going to convert them into a lead, into an inquiry. So we need to make sure all elements of that funnel are present, but it all starts with knowing who you're talking to, what problem you solve, what problems they've got, and your offer within that. So hopefully that makes sense, and you can go and put those things into place, because without any of that stuff, you are going to really, really struggle. And I cannot stress enough how important personal brand is. You don't need to be a social media celebrity. You don't need to be fake, but you need to understand people buy off people. They need to like you. So make sure you're showing you. And this is what a lot of coaches, especially kind of bodybuilding type coaches who are very like, evidence-based and very kind of service-led, they do struggle with this because they're like, I don't feel a bit salesy, but you need to do it. Otherwise you look like everyone else and no one's going to differentiate you between another coach. So that's really important. If you do all those things, you will get more leads. And I cannot stress how important all those bits are. So hopefully that helps. Okay. Any advice on how to be more productive? I find myself procrastinating constantly and not getting anything done. Join the club. It can happen. So people often think I'm like super productive, and I can be. But there's times where I will procrastinate like crazy. Like I will just procrastinate. That's like my base function is procrastination. And it's tough to sometimes get away from that. The things I found that really helpful, understand what you need to do, right? So what's the task required of you? Understand how to do it, so make sure you have the relevant skills, and then block off time to go and do said thing. If you can do that, you will make sure that you get it done. So Parkinson's law is my friend. Parkinson's law is the time allocated to do a task is how long it will take to do it. So if you give yourself 4 hours to do a task, it'll take you 4 hours. Give yourself an hour, it'll take you an hour, right? So that is time blocking 101. Put time blocks in place and you will get stuff done, and put more pressure on yourself to get things done. If you add in sleep, so 8 hours sleep a night, some caffeine, some nootropics, you're probably going to be off to the races. But for me, most of the time, it's having a plan. So that could be an actual understanding of what you need to do, making sure that you've got guidelines, you've got a time function, maybe you've done an Eisenhower matrix so you know where to spend your time. If you can do that, then it's just a case of going and making sure it gets done. And the other thing that I find helps procrastination a lot is I sit and I go, if I don't do this, it doesn't get done. Where does that lead me? If that leads me down a road of I don't get the outcome that I want, I don't make the money, I don't build the business, I don't help people, then that is not what I want. So by understanding that me procrastinating gives me that outcome, what's the outcome I want? I want build the business, help more people, make more money, build a life that I want. Okay, what does that require me to do? Take action. Okay, that's what I'm going to go and do. And it's a consistent battle for sure, but that's the way that I find helps a lot. So if you can incorporate those things, that should set you on your way. So this is a great question. I'm really struggling to know who my niche is. I want to work with bodybuilders, but I don't work with any and struggle to know who to target with my content. So essentially, you want to target bodybuilders, but you don't work with any at the moment, and you feel like your current niche is not who you want to work with. So what I would say here is your niche doesn't always have to be demographic based, right? It can just be, what problem do I solve? So bodybuilders have got the same problems to some degree as everyone else. They want to get more jacked, they want to get leaner, and they want to do it in a way that matches their goals. So you can just talk about your experience of getting jacked, your experience of getting lean. You can talk about general issues that people face. The only thing that's different with bodybuilding is it's just a more narrower end goal. They want to have a higher level of muscle mass than most people, a lower level of body fat at competition than most people. They have a higher risk tolerance than most people. They are willing to be more extreme than most people. So if we think of like a Gaussian distribution, so like a bell curve, they are like to the far right of what they want in terms of outcome. So, but we can still address that issue within our content. So it doesn't always have to be as specific as if you're a first-time bodybuilder, or if you're trying to step on stage. Yes, that can be helpful within your targeting. But if you're trying to attract more serious people, talk more seriously at them. Remember, whatever we put out as content is the bait. So we're going to catch that fish. If you're putting out content about you training really hard, you having a really serious journey, you dieting for a shoot or show, you working with higher level people, or you wanting to work with higher level people, you talking about higher level behaviors, habits, outcomes, like dieting techniques, training techniques, etc., you're probably going to attract a more serious trainee, and then that will manifest itself into them probably being the sort of person that's going to compete or at least do a shoot, and it'll work down that way. I don't think you should necessarily, especially if you're not working any right now, just completely like pull the pin and go all in on that, only because that may end up affecting your business negatively in the short term. So you want to kind of transition. And I always look at it like, if you're going to move from one like niche to another, make sure that you're safe to take a bit of a jump. Now, when I say safe, I'm not saying you never take a risk. What I'm saying is, if you're currently doing, I don't know, 5K a month with your current niche, and there's zero like bodybuilders or anything on your roster, you don't want to be like, fuck you guys, I'm going in. You might just not have a business, I might go bankrupt or whatever. But start to, with your actions, behaviors, content, personal branding, everything, start to move towards a more serious trainee. You will start to attract that sort of person. I'll give a really basic, silly example. One of my clients was struggling to attract serious trainers, like someone who goes and trains hard in the gym. And I was like, why don't you show more of your training as you taking sets to failure? Because right now it's just like a swipe through, and it's the first few reps of a set. So they can't see you training hard. Guess what? Over a period of, I don't want to say it's overnight, but with a period of like 1 or 2 months, they put out more content on training, them training really hard, talking about their benefits of training, them actually visually seeing that person go to failure. Guess what? More serious trainers inquired because they saw the coach doing just that. So be the dream outcome for your clientele in some way, shape or form. You don't necessarily have to compete, right? I know lots of prep coaches that have never stepped on stage. I've taken plenty of people to stage and never stepped on stage myself, but I take things seriously and I put out content that's going to help those people, even if it's not directly aimed at competition clients. So you can solve their problems without talking directly at them without a call out. It doesn't have to be like, are you a bodybuilder? It could just be aiming at, as I say, at their problem in general. So hopefully that helps. What are the main things you think people waste time on when they're scaling, growing a business? Everyone loves the word scaling, don't they? I always think, when I think of scaling, I think of bad mentors, but I know where people get it from. So let me say that again. What things do you think people waste time on when scaling? Great question. What do people waste time on? Let me just give a top of the head things. Wasting time on stuff that gives them no actual advantage in their business. So a lot of people like to feel busy. Like, I'm going to buy the latest fucking camera set or monitor or webcam or software, or I'm going to plan this thing, I'm going to get a videographer, and ultimately it's a waste of time. Like, they convince themselves that they're missing this shiny tool and that's the thing that's going to take them to the next level, when in fact it's probably just they need to work harder. I know so many coaches who've got a fucking fantastic business and all they've got is a MacBook and they have a phone, right? Those are the two things they have, right? They don't need the latest software. Like, don't get me wrong, there's a higher quality photography setup, all things being equal. Is it going to be better? Yeah. But does it really matter? No, it does not. So I think buying shit that you don't need by convincing yourself that you do, you absolutely don't. And this goes for software as well. I've never talked about this before, but it's the mentor circle jerk. They tell everyone they need this go high level or similar software. You need this ad system. You need this thing, whatever. And everyone's getting backhanders all over the place. It's a big circle jerk. I've got Otis, my cat, coming and say hello. Big circle jerk. Everyone's just in on this slice of the pie, but no one gets anything from it, right? It's just a complete waste of money. But everyone's like being told you need it. You don't. You could run such a successful business with G Sheets or a bit of coaching software that's good, a MacBook, a phone. There you go. That's all you need. Literally all you need. You can have some software like Stripe, and a few other bits, and that would probably be it, and you're going to be okay. You don't need all this other stuff. What else do people waste their time on? Doing more courses to solve a problem you've already solved. So I'm not saying you should never invest in education, you always should. But for example, if you've done 4 biomechanics courses, you probably don't need another one if your business is on its arse, right? If you are a biomechanics expert and you want to keep focusing in on that and you're already busy, go fucking nuts. I know so many good guys doing that and they're crushing it, but they've already got a successful business. So find the immediate bottleneck and don't just do stuff to look busy, solve the constraint. So if you've got a marketing problem, doing more courses on biomechanics probably isn't the issue right now, right? So think about where the bottleneck is and put time into that thing. That's number one. I won't waste time on. Bad mentors, that would be an answer there. Bad mentors who don't understand what they're doing. So I've seen so many people waste time going to a mentor, spending an ungodly amount of money, which has destroyed their business because they didn't understand it, and it was generic advice like send more DMs and the general shit that you hear, as opposed to actually understanding how businesses work and improving it on that basis. So that's a massive one. I'm probably missing some absolute basic ones here most people waste their time on. You know what I see a lot is people not treating their business like a business, and they'll go haircuts during the day, they'll go to the gym during the day, they'll go and see their mates during the day, like they'll do all this stuff and they're like, oh, I didn't get much done this week. It's like, well no, because you actually only worked 20 hours. Like no wonder, like you're going to build a business on 20 hours work? Probably not. Like as much as we read Tim Ferriss's book, probably not applicable to most people in real life. So I'd certainly think people waste their time on there. Running ads when they haven't got their business in a good shop. So I always look at someone's Instagram page, and I'm going to say Instagram as social media here, but your Instagram page is your shop front. So unless it's looking good, it's got all the answers to the questions like who you are, what you do, who you help, it's consistent, it's pointless spending money on ads. And people think that they need to because you've got some coaches saying you need to do that when they actually fucking don't. That's one thing they waste the time on, for sure. I'm sure I've missed some really obvious stuff there, but those are the ones that come to mind straight away. And last question for today. Have you changed your mind on anything in the last year, coaching or business? Fucking great question. So coaching wise, yes. So volume, at this point in time, I think people need a lot less volume than I previously gave it credit for. And this is something I've changed my mind on a lot. Now, I will caveat this. I always think you should do as much volume as you can tolerate, because more volume is likely to equal more gains. However, the amount that people can tolerate, I think, is a lot lower than I gave it credit for before. So having seen this with myself, well, I'll do like 6 to 8 sets per body part, and I'm on lower drugs than I've ever been on, massive amount of jiu-jitsu per week. So I'm probably doing like 10 hours of jiu-jitsu per week, doing less training, less volume than ever, and I haven't lost any size out of what I would have lost from the anabolics, like coming down. So I'm like, there's always something about that. And it's not just me, I'm seeing this with tons of my clients, their clients, as we're kind of communicating about this and they're passing that on with their clients. We're seeing better and better results with their clients. So I'm getting quite bullish on we need a lot less volume to grow than we previously thought. Not saying more doesn't do more, because it absolutely does, but we probably need less than we think to get a very robust training response. So I'll hold my hands up and say I'll change my mind on that. I'll change my mind on zone 2. So I used to look at zone 2 as a mandatory thing we need to include for general health. But when I've looked into the research of zone 2, it seems massively inefficient when compared to high intensity intervals. And as I've incorporated that with myself, my clients, the results from a health perspective, longevity perspective, all around heart rate reduction, sporting performance, etc., have significantly improved. So unless you are a bodybuilder or someone who's solely interested in hypertrophy, I'm probably going to suggest that zone 2 is inefficient. I wouldn't say waste of time, I would say very inefficient as a time cost. And as I've worked with more athletes, unless recovery capabilities are the issue, in which zone 2 can be helpful in terms of recovery and things like that, I would say zone 2 is very inefficient for getting training adaptations for performance goals. Again, there's a lot of nuance in that statement, but I've definitely changed my mind on that significantly. And I've also changed my mind, if you can call it change my mind, on what peptides I think are more beneficial than others. And I'm very, very bullish on SS31. I think that's great. I think Reta's great. I think GHKCU is really good as well. So those guys are ones I would say I've definitely, I would say changed my mind on, but I've just become more bullish, especially SS31. I think it's incredibly effective for a lot of individuals, especially as they age. So that's one I would say I'm just more, I'm more happy to program for sure. And in terms of business, anything I've changed my mind in the last year, I think virality is something I've changed my mind on. So I used to be very much of the mindset that we don't want to go viral. And the reason for that is to not bring in loads of the wrong people to your page. And I think I just needed to be more specific. So now I look at virality as a wonderful thing if it's on target virality. So virality with your niche. So let's say you coach professional ex-footballers. If you suddenly had 100,000 professional ex-footballers come to your page and follow up, is that going to be better or worse for your business? It's viral. You've gone viral. Is that worth it? You'd be like, absolutely fucking yes. If there's 100,000 randomers who had nothing to do with you, then it's a bad thing because it dilutes your brand. So I think just more contextualization of virality is incredibly important because at the end of the day, having a higher target of people to go after with your content is absolutely what we want, but it's the right people. So virality is something I'll change my mind on for sure. What else I'll change my mind on? I think I'll probably change my mind on just the general scope of business in the sense of, as I said at the start of the video, start of the podcast, about scaling and going up from there. I think I used to be like, take it to the moon, everyone. And as I've kind of worked with more people, I've realized we want to be just thinking more about their individual goals than anything else. That's certainly one. And on top of that, I think I've generally kept the same philosophy, to be honest with you. There's not a lot that I've necessarily changed my mind on. I think it's just a case of I've got better. I've got better as a coach. I've got better as a mentor. And because of that, I've seen better results from my guys. I don't think it's necessarily because I changed my mind about any huge topics. It was just getting better and iterating. And obviously some of the things I mentioned there are big changes, but for the most part, I think just getting better, as we all should be attempting to do, as I've spent an ungodly amount of money on marketing training and mentoring, etc., from various different things. So that's it. But those are all the questions, guys. I hope you found that useful. I should probably try and do a few of these more regularly because I do like them. I do like answering the questions. So hopefully you guys like the answers. And if there's anything you'd like to see me talk about, please let me know in the comments or drop me a DM on Instagram. I'll put all the links below. But like I said at the start, if you could, and you do enjoy this, please make sure that you follow and subscribe. It means the world to me. If you want to check out any of my links, they're in the show notes below. And I'll catch you in the next video or in the podcast in your ears. Thank you very much, guys.